দর্শক আমন্ত্রণ জানাচ্ছি চ্যানেল 24-এর নিয়মিত আয়োজন মুখোমুখিতে প্রতি পর্বে আমাদের সাথে একজন বিশেষ অতিথি থাকে। এ পর্বে আমাদের সাথে আছে ঢাকার যুক্তরাজ্যের হাই কমিশনার রবার্ট ডিকসন। উনি 4 বছর এখানে ছিলেন। 4 বছরে ওনার নানান ধরনের অভিজ্ঞতা হয়েছে এবং নানান ধরনের মানুষের সাথে তিনি মিশেছেন, দেখেছেন, বিভিন্ন জেলায় গিয়েছেন, ঘুরেছেন। সব জায়গার অভিজ্ঞতা কেমন ছিল, নানাভাবে তিনি আলোচনায় এসছেন। নির্বাচন নিয়ে কথা বলার কারণে 1972 সালে সংবিধান নিয়ে কথা বলার জন্য উনি আলোচনায় এসছেন। অনেক কিছু এসছে। তো সব কিছু নিয়ে আমরা তার অভিজ্ঞতা শুনবো। আর উনি হয়তো বা চলে যাবেন যখন আপনারা এই শোটা দেখবেন, বাই দ্যাট টাইম। সো but let's start it. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Yeah, I'm very sad to be leaving Bangladesh. I've had a wonderful more than 4 years here. I've seen so much change in Bangladesh. I've seen all sorts of changes in infrastructure, physical changes. I've seen, obviously, for everyone, it's been a strange time because of COVID and the pandemic. And then the international scene, of course, has been very disturbed by Russia's brutal, unprovoked war of aggression against Ukraine. But what I've really seen is a sort of flowering of the relationship between the UK and Bangladesh. I've seen a real shift from a development-focused relationship to one that reflects the fact that Bangladesh is going through LDC graduating from least developed country status. And we've shifted towards what is a much more balanced relationship, which includes trade, defence, security, all of those things which were there already, but they're a much more pronounced part of the relationship. And I suppose other things I've seen, I mean, I'm constantly reminded of the very close links between Bangladesh and the UK. And we had a particularly strong example of that when Her Majesty the Queen died last September. And there was a real sense of sort of national mourning in Bangladesh. The Honourable Prime Minister came to the residence and signed our condolence book. She then attended Her Majesty's funeral in London. And I'm very pleased to say that she will be going to the coronation of His Majesty, King Charles III, in London next month. So, as I said, at every level, there is this very close relationship between the UK and Bangladesh. And it's been my huge privilege as High Commissioner to help push it in the right direction, I hope, over the last 4 years, but with a tremendous amount to work with on both sides, tremendous empathy between our two countries at every level, and it's been fantastic to be part of that.
Right. So you had a meeting just a few days ago with her Honourable Prime Minister.
I did.
How was the meeting? What are the issues you've been discussed?
We had a really good meeting. The Honourable Prime Minister was kind enough to give me an hour of her time, which was very much appreciated. And we had a very...
1 hour?
An hour, 60 minutes of
that's quite
of time.
Long
It was
time.
very, very, very good meeting. She was very engaged in the discussion. And we talked about the coronation, and she's looking forward to going to London on her trip and she's of course going to Japan and the US, then on to London for the coronation. And we talked again about how close she felt to the royal family in the UK and the role model that she felt Her Majesty had been, and how she has worked with His Majesty, including on climate at COP26 in Glasgow a couple of years ago. And so we talked about the whole range of issues between our countries. We talked about the importance that we think applies to the next election, how we as the UK think that by far the best thing for Bangladesh to continue to prosper and grow as a middle-income country after LDC graduation is to have an election that is free, fair, credible, participatory, so that the people of Bangladesh have the opportunity to choose a government that will push the country, bring the country through the next stage of its development, and how what Bangladesh needs more than anything is foreign direct investment.
Right.
You know, foreign direct investment is actually quite small as a proportion of the economy at the moment. By international standards, it's around 1%. And as a middle-income country, Bangladesh is going to need more private investment, whether that's portfolio investment, direct investment in factories, investment in the capacity of Bangladesh. And by far the best way of attracting international investors is to demonstrate institutional quality. If there are quality institutions, then companies are more likely to invest in a country. And for a parliamentary democracy like Bangladesh, the best foundation of institutional quality is good elections that are recognised as free, fair, participatory, where everybody has a chance to cast their vote freely for the sort of government that they want. And what the Prime Minister said in the meeting was that she is very open to the idea that there would be international observation. I think we as the UK would be very keen to be part of an international observation effort. Exactly how that would be run is still to be negotiated, but I think the principle is very important, and it was clear that the Prime Minister accepted that, which is very welcome. We talked about trade. We're very keen
Right.
to do more on aerospace in Bangladesh.
yeah,
We think there's
yeah.
a real opportunity for Bangladesh. Bangladesh is between three of the fastest growing aviation markets in the
Right.
world: India, China, Southeast Asia. And of course, huge numbers of Bangladeshis travel every year all over the world. And it would be a very good thing if Bangladesh had more civil aviation capacity to take advantage of its geographical position and the size of the market. And Airbus, which is a UK, it's a company based in the UK, France, Germany and Spain, but a big European champion, has a lot to offer Bangladesh in this
Okay.
area. And so we discussed some of the possibilities with the Prime Minister. I discussed some of the possibilities and she was very open to that. So we look forward to that project going forward with the strong support of Airbus themselves and also of the four governments from the partner countries. We talked about climate, because there's a strong climate accord between the UK and Bangladesh, and the document which governs that was signed by our Indo-Pacific Minister when she was here last month. So there's a strong agreement between our countries about how we're going to work with Bangladesh, both on mitigation and on adaptation, the two sides of climate and how you make progress on that. And we talked about the Rohingyas, where Bangladesh has been fantastically generous in hosting 1 million Rohingya refugees, driven, of course, in the most appalling way out of their homes in Myanmar more than 5 years ago. And the tragedy, I think, is that global humanitarian resources are under huge pressure.
Right.
Because since the Rohingyas arrived here, we've had the collapse in Afghanistan, we've had the brutal, unprovoked Russian aggression against Ukraine. There's a crisis in the Horn of Africa. There's a crisis in Yemen. So everywhere, humanitarian resources are under huge pressure.
I'm really surprised to know, because obviously she's busy, you were busy, and you were living, so you had other schedule as well. So out of the discussions, what are the issues when you talk, that I have two particular questions on the election, on the Rohingya, and other issues I'll come later on. The first of all, how UK is watching the situation, and as up to now, we haven't seen the opposition is quite interested to take part in the election as of now, because of whatever the scenario government have created. Do you had any feeling when we had a discussion with the Prime Minister that she will leave some space for the opposition to make it participatory? Did you find that goodwill? That's number one. And if it is not participatory, even then, your country will send the observer to observe the election, or what's the?
Well, one of the things we talked about was the role of an opposition in a parliamentary democracy, and the Prime Minister reminded me a couple of times that the Bangladesh system is one that draws on the model of the Westminster parliamentary democracy, and I think in that system the opposition has a crucial role. Because what the opposition does is it holds the government to account. Its job is to scrutinise and hold to account what a government does, and that's very important. And of course, it also needs to present an alternative vision for the future of the country. That is the role of the opposition: is to be an alternative government which can take over if the electorate decides that that's what should happen. And we talked about that, and I do think it's very important in a parliamentary system that the opposition is given the space that it needs to carry out those functions. And now exactly how that happens is obviously a matter between the parties themselves and the Election Commission and others. But clearly it would be much better, the broader the range of choice that people have in the election, then the more value there is in the exercise. Because what an opposition party needs to demonstrate is that it is a credible alternative government with ideas and people who can put those ideas into action. And I think it's very important that an opposition party is able to, in the run-up to an election, is able to perform those functions. And then after the election, whoever ends up in opposition, it's very important that the opposition takes seriously its responsibilities, which are, as I said, to be, scrutinise the government, to hold the government to account, and to offer an alternative to the people of whichever country it is, in this case, of course, Bangladesh. Now, as I said, the exact way that happens will depend on Bangladeshis, on the parties, on the Election Commission, and of course the media has a part to play in shaping that as well, in providing the venue for an honest debate between the parties about the future of the country and what might work best in terms of the challenges which will undoubtedly face Bangladesh as a middle-income country in a much more competitive economic environment. So there's a lot for everyone to do on that.
Okay.
But I think what is important is to accept the basic value, the basic legitimacy of a party which is not in power, but nonetheless can have a view as to the future of the country and where it should go.
And what about the observer? If the election is not participatory by any means, doesn't matter what happens.
Well, I think there's a lot of work to be done to work out the exact mandate for an international observation mission. But I do think that observers can play a really important role in reinforcing the confidence of both Bangladeshis themselves, but also international friends in the nature of the democratic contest. So I do think that there is an important role. As I said, it's too early to set out the exact terms, but my understanding is that there will be partner organisations, partner countries coming to Bangladesh during the summer to do a detailed reconnaissance of how an observation mission might work. And I think we in the UK will definitely want to be part of that effort. But it's not for me sitting here now in April to say exactly how that will play out.
Definitely.
In the summer when the terms are decided, or at the end of the year when the election itself takes place.
Do you really find that there is a breathing space which is needed to have a good election, free and fair, to all the parties to come a certain point?
I think it's very important that there is. It's very important that there is that the parties give themselves. I think there are some basic principles that one can see. I mean, it's not for me. I'm not. It's for Bangladeshis to work this out. But I think if you think that an election is an opportunity to have a discussion among the whole country, between the parties and the voters about the direction of the country, then clearly that can only really happen if there is the space for parties to organise, have events, and have a free discussion about their vision for the future of the country. And I think that is really the basic environment. Without that sort of environment, then it is obviously much harder to hold a free, fair, participatory election. So I think it's highly desirable that happens. And I think the other thing is, it seems to me that the more that an election focuses on the future, the better. And obviously, of course, history is very important, and I can completely understand why, given that Bangladesh has a history that has been very eventful and is obviously well within the living memory of everyone, is well within my own living memory. I can see why past events still play a very large part in the politics of Bangladesh. But it does seem to me that this is a country where the median age is 26, and there are enormous choices in front of Bangladesh. As I said, it's a country which is graduating from LDC status. It has new opportunities, but also new challenges facing it. And I think the key thing that it seems to me the parties should be doing is putting forward a vision for how Bangladesh can grow, thrive, prosper in this new environment, in an environment where as a least developed country, there is access to concessional finance, there is market access that is a given. Those things will become more challenging as Bangladesh becomes a middle-income country. And the things that Bangladesh will need to thrive, as I said a minute ago, more foreign direct investment, a more skilled workforce, more diversified economy, more modern capital markets, greater skills, all of those things are really important. And I think an election that focused on those issues and some of the challenges, this is a world of geopolitical competition, climate change, which obviously has a major impact here in Bangladesh. I think an election and an argument that focused on those things, with the parties putting forward visions for how they think their vision is the one that can help Bangladesh to thrive and prosper in a challenging world, that would seem to me to be the best sort of argument for Bangladesh to have.
Right. On the discussion, we'll take break from this episode. We'll come next episode and we'll continue this discussion because we have a lot to discuss and a few other issues are there, which are pretty major apart from the election and political dialogues. দর্শক, আমরা এই পর্ব এখানেই শেষ করছি। মুখোমুখির পরের পর্বেও থাকবেন ব্রিটিশ হাই কমিশনার। আমরা সেই পর্বে রোহিঙ্গা, ক্লাইমেট চেঞ্জ, ডিফেন্স এবং ট্রেড স্ট্র্যাটেজি, রিলেশনশিপ এবং প্রোগ্রেস নিয়ে আলোচনা করব। সাথে থাকবেন, আশা করি দেখা হবে পরবর্তী পর্বে।